Welcome, and thank you for joining for another whiskey review. Today, we're taking a look at the new Springbank Local Barley 11-year-old. Dustin. This one comes in at 55.1% ABV, and according to the back of the label, it was put into the bottle on 12/12/22. And you know what I like about that number? I don't have to think about it. It's December 12th or another month because we're Americans.
Yeah.
12/12 means 12/12. It's December 12th, no matter how you look at it. I like it when things are simple.
I do, yeah.
Especially numbers. All right. Another year, another Springbank Local Barley, Dustin. This time 11, so not the oldest one, but an older one.
Yeah, it's tied for the second oldest of the series since they brought it back with the 16-year.
Yeah, a couple 11-year-olds. But like most of these things, we like to bring these local barleys to you. So Dustin once again did a fantastic job of sourcing these local barleys. Comes in the same box as it came in last year.
Which is surprising. They dropped the box on almost everything else. But local barley keeps the box. 18, sorry, no box.
Yep. That's how it goes.
Just to add to that, Mike, this is from the Glencraigs Farm. Mm-hmm. And the barley type is Belgravia. 15,000 bottles. And from our research, 55 sherry,
45 bourbon.
And
it's light.
It's light, but it is dark.
It's light.
It's light for that much sherry, but it is darker than like last year's 100% bourbon.
It has a very bourbon look to it, in my opinion.
I would venture to guess refilled casks.
Yes.
That is the guess. And Springbank does very well with refilled sherry.
All right, Dustin. First thing I'm getting here, twinge of sour, along with that funkiness. A nice little sharp sweetness to it. Mm-hmm. The grain note's about as solid as it is on most years. But I would say, on first nosing, a twinge of sour is kind of what stands out from some years. Now, this is smells a little bit better aged than I think the 10 did last year in some of the other recent incarnations. But, like with the sherry one, it was hard to tell. Thoughts?
So I'm getting Welch's white grape juice, only it's like a slightly medicinal version of that. Mm. If they turned Welch's white grape juice into some kind of cough syrup, that is dead on what I'm getting initially here. Very nice, grainy, earthy barley note kind of on the finish. Initially up front, it's just a really sweet, very sweet whiskey.
It's going back for it. There's a sharp sweetness too, but then there's always a twinge of sour with the funkiness specifically.
Well, I mean, let's say grape juice I've always considered somewhat acidic, sour.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's there. But again, it's a juicy kind of sweetness and sourness. Simple, yet incredibly well balanced, and also very unique. I really can't say that I've had a lot of whiskeys that I don't think I've ever said Welch's white grape juice ever on a whiskey nose.
Local bars are always a treat in any scenario. This one to me is fun because it's different. You can tell there's a little bit of age on this compared to some of the other ones. Mm-hmm. It's going in definitely some different directions, and I want to make sure I'm picking because there's some fruits here I'm just not quite pinpointing. You've had this a few times, but this is my first time with it.
Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed this one. I really think highly of this particular bottle.
Okay, I'm gonna say green apple skin with none of the tartness.
I can see the green apple skin, yeah, definitely. Again, that white grape juice, apple skin, yeah.
Yeah, there's almost something that almost like the port finish on the Balvenie 21-year-old port were the standard one, right? There's some type of white peach, as I always called that. I wouldn't call this white peach, but it's very similar.
It keeps wanting me to go into starting to talk about like a whisper of cinnamon, but it doesn't quite get there. It's
a flower note too.
Yeah. It starts to go a bunch of different directions, and it just never gets there for me. It's like I get whispers of little notes.
I agree with the whisper of cinnamon. There's some type of flower petal that's here too. A bit of honey.
Yeah. Just a hint. I'm not getting I'm not getting any real vanilla notes here. I mean, maybe there's a hint.
There's something like a little bit of a wood shaving note.
There is just some slight oakiness, but I'm not getting any of the cookies that we're used to with the Springbank.
I'm getting the funkiness, but not the cookies. Like with the honey note too and the wood note, it's almost like I had like a carpenter bee, like in my deck one time.
Okay.
And like I just that smell that pollen
kind
in
of
the
dug
air,
through a little
and
bit.
then they dug through a little bit, like that little just like eaten into cedar slightly with a twinge of honey.
Yeah, I'm picking up on just a hint with the oak. I'm getting a little bit of saltiness. You know, again, maybe just some of that Campbelltown sea breeze sneaking into the cask.
Almost like a waxy beeswax coming in.
I can see that. Yeah. I wouldn't call this waxy, but there is, again, a whisper of wax. I mean, everything in here, after that initial, like, sweet, fruity, sour kind of thing, and then a little bit of oak on the finish, is just kind of whispers, where it starts to give us something, but it doesn't give us enough.
I hate to keep pounding this drum about age, but every local barley, the older they are, the better they are. Like, 16 is better than all of the other ones. Like, the 11s were good.
The first 11 was solid. The 9 was probably my least favorite.
Right.
Well, except the sherry one, but that's just because it wasn't local
Yeah,
barley.
bourbon, all sherry, put those aside. Yeah, like the 9 was my least favorite. The 11s were pretty good. 16 was really good.
16 was freaking amazing. Guys, we'll be willing to go 6 years without seeing another local barley if they all become 16 years going forward. Just saying, Springbank. That worked. That worked, guys.
That was one of the worst buys I ever had. There were 3 there. They were like
About one.
they were like 186. I'm like, I'll buy one. Like, I don't know about this guy.
16 years. Yeah, back then, 16 years and 180 was just stupid.
Yeah, it was a lot of money. It was.
I remember how I would laugh at the idea of buying the local barley. The first one I saw was a 10. I was just sitting on the shelf, and I realized that they had one they opened or that you could sample, and I was like, hey, can I get a sample of that? I tasted that little quarter ounce and turned around and bought 2, man. I was like, $180 for 10-year-old whiskey? You better believe it.
I bought that the same day that I think I bought either Highland Park 25 or something else that was a pretty solid whiskey. I remember thinking like 25, 30 years for, no, it was Highland Park 28 for 380.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I was like, man, I could almost buy 2 of these. Like if I get 2 or 3 of these, I could buy a Highland Park 28. That was my theory.
Yeah,
Terrible theory.
Should have bought all of them.
Should've bought
All the 28s and the local barleys.
Yep. Should have robbed the place. I'm kidding. Metaphorically speaking, of course, with a credit card.
When you were a kid, remember they have like the thing where like the kid would go into Toys R Us and you had 2 minutes and whatever you could grab you got. You do that in a liquor store. I'd be in there, I'd just kick that door right open on the case and just clear it out. Oh man, that'd be fun.
A little more traditional in the taste. Super funky. At the end, the cookies come in for sure. But, a nice little sharp sweetness initially at first. Then barley, and then it got super funky. But a good funk. Vanilla's there. Good wallop of vanilla on this one. Easy finish. Doesn't come off 55-1 at all. It comes off so palatable. Thoughts?
I've never disagreed with you more on notes ever.
Go for it.
Wow.
Give it to me. A
So
little bit of lemon.
I'm getting almost like a port cask, like a white port or something up front. Again, it's kind of that, white grape. Not quite as grapey, but notes are coming through up front. Good wallop of fruits and sours up front. And then it gets into this very drying, complex barley like thing that's going on here. I'm not getting any vanilla, Mike. I'm not getting any of those notes. I mean, I'm getting like some spices. I'm getting vanilla. It is funky, I agree, but in a way that I'm not used to with Springbank Local Barleys. But then again, I mean, local barley is its own unique barley note, so they can be I think they're generally a little less funky than traditional Springbank. I'm not getting any of the cookies. I'm going for the taste before I add water just to make sure I'm not going crazy.
Yeah, a bunch of vanilla. That vanilla note may be kind of intertwined in the wine note for you. Perhaps, I'm guessing. But to me, man, it was a good amount of funk. And really, the sugar cookie didn't come until the very end. So it's a funk sugar cookie free until the very end of the experience, which is also a little bit different.
Okay, I do see the vanilla on the very up front, but you're right. As soon as that wine note hits, it's gone to me.
And you're right, it is drying.
Very drying.
It is drying. I don't think we're that far off.
We're converging. But you're just the way you went straight to vanilla. I was like, really? Okay, I get it now.
At first, it's just quick, sharp.
You're right.
Yeah.
The very first thing that touches your tongue, but I mean, it goes away so quick.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, really, the linger here is long funk. Really funky.
It's
And a little bit
very,
of lemon.
it's very aggressive, assertive barley husk kind of thing going on here for sure.
You getting the lemon on the finish? No, lemon.
I get sourness with it. You could call that lemon. To me, it's just kind of, again, it's just barley husk, man. It's like a little bit of sour barley husk.
It's pretty straightforward, but not exactly simple.
It's definitely not simple.
Yeah, and what I mean by that is just there are 4 or 5 or 6 things. There's things we can basically we're taking different paths to get to essentially the same place, and that's kind of a sign of.
It tells you there's a little complexity. You got different paths.
Correct, exactly.
Now, water, Mike, is giving me a little more traditional Springbank here.
Got funkier.
Got a little funkier, but I'm getting some of that tradition. I'm starting to get some sugar cookie.
You gotta be getting vanilla at this point.
Well, I got vanilla on the nose originally. It was the palate that was lacking. But
More vanilla though.
yeah, no, I agree. I mean, with the sugar cookies, it's again. I mean, I don't know. It might just be there's more sugar cookie. I mean, sugar cookies are kind of vanilla-ish. Mm-hmm. Do you put vanilla extract in a sugar cookie?
I think you do.
There you go.
Never baked in my life.
I've never made a cookie. Yeah, no.
Ate plenty. Had some yesterday. Flyers, chocolate chip. They were delicious.
Fresh out of your microwave, I'm sure.
Got them at the store. A little bit of vanilla waffle, or wafer, if you will.
Now there's a lot more vanilla on the palate. The sourness has subsided with the water.
Agreed, on the nose.
Now the funky, grapey, port winey kind of thing is coming in on the finish for me. Not so much up front, which gives it a more interesting and more desirable finish for me. So yeah, a drop of water in this one seems to be a pretty good idea.
All right, with water, I'm fine with you on the grape note. But here's the thing. You know what I think that is? I think it's from the sherry cask. It's the last little tannic notes being ripped out of a fifth fill sherry butt.
It's well used.
Yeah,
very well used.
That I think what that note. I mean, not that I like that note. It's not that I don't like the note, but I think these sherry casks were very. This was their last day.
One thing I have learned was...
Man, I tell you what, I'm sorry, not to interrupt, but
Yeah.
man, the barley note is really here on the finish, too. Like, it just sticks and lingers on the back of your tongue.
It gives it a really long finish. But I was getting ready to say is, Springbank has done this before where they used very tired sherry cask. And I was unimpressed with the whiskey when I first opened it, even like the first 6 months to a year. And then it just really started to grow on me. Sometimes the aromatics take a while on those tired sherry casks.
Springbank in general.
One of the Springbank 25s I've had was really disappointing at first. And now when I go to it, I cannot believe how much sherry's there because it looks lighter than this. And it's a 25-year-old and it's 100% ex-sherry.
That is a negative trying to get, these whiskey reviews out in somewhat of a reasonable time frame. And you had this open for,
2 weeks?
Yeah, something like that. So it's oxidized to some degree, but...
I mean, as you can tell, I went in and did 2 heavy pours my first night with it, and I poured it once or twice since, but...
As you mentioned many times, Springbank needs time in the glass and time in the bottle, both. I mean, they both really...
A long time.
Yeah, especially cask strength offerings. Lagavulins, to me, was always the same, too, with all their specialty bottlings. Like, man, you open up one of those cask strength bottlings, give it a year, as you work it down or so, at the end, man...
They can really change on you, and usually for the better.
Usually for the better. Almost, especially cask strength whiskeys in a good distillery, like, say, Lagavulin for a face shield or...
Cask strength in anything
Fest
really non-first fill sherry, but if it has sherry or, like, port or something...
Sometimes it can diminish the pungency of it.
You need time when it's a refill.
Yes, you need time when it's a refill.
Or finishing even sometimes.
Because again, I think the twinge of bitterness in this is coming from the bourbon cask. I've had enough young bourbon cask maturation where that twinge of bitterness I know is usually a bourbon cask. Comes off very Balvenie 12-year-old single barrel-esque as far as that twinge.
It's the twinge at the end, yeah. I guess that little bit of sourness that Ralphie loves and most of us don't. Shout out to Ralphie, of course.
He does love that.
He loves a little bit of sour funk.
He's not the only one, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I mean, this is unique. This is different than any other local barley I've had because it's definitely funkier. It's bringing out that weird, winey, grapey kind of note that I've just never had. I love the barley finish. It's probably not my favorite local barley, but man, I am glad to own this bottle. I am glad I have a backup. And... well, where are you at, Mike?
Dustin, well, I'm glad you got me one of these bottles as well. I'm glad you were able to share your open bottle with me, so that's always fun. Thank you for thinking of me as always.
Always, man.
As far as the whiskey score on this one, this is, how many local barleys have I done? 6, 7, something like that. I would rank it in the upper middle of the local barleys I've done. As far as a whiskey score, I'm a very solid 88 out of 100. There's a lot of things I like here. There's a couple things that are hem-haw about it. But overall, it does a few more things than some of the other local barleys do. I don't like the one-dimensional only bourbon or only sherry. I love the mix.
Yeah.
I got the mix here. I got a little bit of age. There's nothing really too much to complain about other than... And it's a little different. It's not just a cookie.
Yeah,
cutter.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a little funky and a little sour.
You don't buy local barley to get standard Springbank.
Not stamped out, same year after year, same experience.
Well, but you also don't want it to taste like the core range. It's a different farm. It's a different barley. Why would you do that if it's not a different flavor?
No, it is. Now, I'm giving an 88 just overall whiskey score. Now, if they geared more towards some of the elements of Springbank that I preferred that weren't quite the bitter, weren't quite the overly funky without the sugar cookie, I may go higher on this one. So your appreciation for it may be an 89 or a 90. I'm thinking this is at least an 88. That's where I'm at. Yeah. Thoughts?
I was slightly lower in my head because I was actually going between 87 and 88. I had concluded 88 before we got here, but I was thinking I almost considered the 87. So, it's well done. It's excellent whiskey. I couldn't recommend this more strongly for a Springbank fan to pick up because it's doing new stuff. It's different, and it's doing it in a really good way. But there are some notes here. It could be older. Like I think age would have helped this. Let it kind of like bring down. I think there's still a little bit of youth coming through, and some of the casks here I don't think were the best.
Hey man. I have noticed in long row hazel burns, the difference between 11 and 12 years and 15 is a
huge
chasm. You know what I mean? So anytime you're talking 13 years and younger, it's a fairly young whiskey.
So I let this just kind of sit there for a minute, and I went in there for a quick nosing again, Mike, and it gave me a wallop of sherry. And then I went right back to smell again, and the sherry was gone. So the sherry is starting to kind of rise, but it takes a little time.
A little insubstantial. I still think it was a well-used sherry cask. Those are my thoughts.
Oh, I definitely think it was well used. But but my point is, I think with time, this is going to start really having some nice sherry notes. It's just going to take a while for the aromatics to really kind of come through.
I agree. Yeah, these always get better. So anyway, those are our thoughts on the whiskey. Again, I'm an 88. Justin, you say 87 or 88?
I went with 88 ultimately, but I said you were saying you could go higher. I was thinking I could go lower.
I feel like mine's a higher 88, basically. This is type an 88, Dustin's like this an 88.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at anyway. Anyway, those are our thoughts on this year's 11-year-old local barley. You guys had a chance to try this one. Let us know what you guys think. Always a popular whiskey. Dustin, until next time, what do we wish the folks?
Happy farmy drinking.
We'll see you then. Farmy, I should have said that.